June 15th. I almost said January. June 15th, 2023 at 4:44 p.m. Eastern Time. And I got the thumbnail correct this time. Last time I guessed that we were going to talk about Kosovo. We ended up talking about Turkey the whole time. So if anyone's wondering why that last episode said Kosovo and then we just didn't talk about that, I couldn't change the thumbnail afterwards. I have a friend at Rumble who also couldn't change it. We don't know what's up. It is what it is. But this time, I believe I got the thumbnail correct in that we are talking about Chinese special forces at the United States southern border. Miss Lopez, could you please expand on that?
Yeah, Tommy, hi, thanks, and
Yes,
good to be with you as always.
Yes,
so,
ma'am.
there are two outstanding investigative reporters down both at our southern border with Mexico and further on south. Down, especially one of them at the Darien Gap, at the other side of the Darien Gap that sits between Colombia and Panama, from South America going into Central America for illegals headed north. So these two reporters are Todd Bensman, who recently wrote the book Overrun. Excellent. And his partner is Michael Yon, a war correspondent and former Special Forces officer. No, I don't think it was an officer, but it was former Special Forces out of what used to be called Fort Bragg. But he has reported from, conflict zones literally all over the world, but more recently been focusing a lot down south. And as a matter of fact, just before coming on with you, Tommy, I was watching Newsmax with Chris Salcedo, and he had on the program aerial footage. We could talk about this, too, of something called a colonia, which is kind of like a housing development. This one located near Houston, Texas, full of illegals with thousands more on the way, and that aerial footage was obtained by Todd Bensman and Michael Yon, who rented out a plane for the day. I think it was just yesterday on the 14th of June. Here we are, 2023, and that footage now is up all over the place, including Twitter, for both of those reporters, Todd Bensman and Michael Yon. And as I said just now, shown on Chris Salcedo's show at Fox News. But back down further south, which is where Michael Yon has been recently before returning back up north to Texas. And he previously, in multiple occasions, has been on both the Colombian side and the Panamanian side of the Darien Gap, which interestingly in Spanish, the Darien Gap goes by the name of tampon, which means plug, Spanish. In any case, he's been in there, out of there, and the last time that he was reporting, and that I was able to talk with him actually by telephone about a week ago or so, was around a week ago when he was on the Panamanian side of the Darien Gap, and sitting in a little cafe on a main thoroughfare, a road, and it was nighttime when we were talking, and he was actually, I guess, shooting camera footage even as we were talking, and that later appeared on his Twitter feed, which is Michael Yon Jungle, by the way, and the footage he was filming at that point in time was of these great big, very nice, comfortable coach buses, rolling through this village on their way north. Each one of the buses, he said, holds maybe 40, 45 people. And he was counting them as we were sitting there. He down there, me up here. I think we got up to like 8, and I don't know, they were still rolling. But all of them full of illegals and headed north. Well, as part of that story, him being in that little town or village on the Panamanian side of the Darien Gap, people were telling him, and he observed also, and has in the past too, not just this occasion, but many, many, many hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young, fit, military-age Chinese men. Now, the thing about it is that you could say, yes, who wouldn't want to escape out of, that oppressive regime of the Chinese Communist Party and get out of there? Well, okay, but it's not the easiest thing in the world in China to obtain a passport, and then the sums of money that would be required to transport you, from China westward, maybe through Turkey, maybe through Saudi Arabia, maybe through other places along the way stops, ultimately, and these are air flights flying, ultimately all the way over to the Western Hemisphere, often landing in either Cuba, you can see why, or Ecuador. Both of those places, they don't need to have the same kind of documentation, passports and so forth, as other travelers might. And that's why those two landing places. And then from those two places, on to, the northern part of South America, Colombia, and then on up Darien Gap to Panama. So that's the first thing to note. It's not the simplest thing to make that trip. The cartels, which control all of this trafficking, charge $35,000 per person for a trip like that out of Asia, all the way to at least northern part of Central of South America, and maybe more for the rest of the journey on up through Central America, Mexico to the U.S. border. In any case, not the simplest thing for an ordinary Chinese person, a worker, to lay their hands on $35,000. So put all of that together. And then the other thing that these townspeople were telling Michael Yan, again, back to the village in Panama, as they were watching these Chinese young men, and aside from noticing, how military they looked, and you know military, Tommy, and there's a certain bearing, there's a certain carriage, there's a certain sort of the way you handle or carry yourself, right? That's kind of observable.
You can just tell.
But in addition to that, what the townspeople were telling Michael is that upon emerging from the Darien Gap, which is very rugged, it's a dangerous place to traverse through. Very rugged terrain, rivers, poisonous snakes, all kinds of criminals preying on the people going through there and so forth. When people emerge on the other side of it, they're exhausted, they're hungry, they're tired, they're thirsty. But these young Chinese men were coming out, and they were in a celebratory mood. Well, okay, they made it through. But what they were doing, according to the townspeople there, was killing chickens and drinking shots of their blood. Now, that's not what your average, illegal alien coming up through the Darien Gap does upon arrival safely on the Panamanian side. It's just not.
No, it sounds more like
that really
does sound
stood
like
out.
some.
So, Michael, who knows Dr. Li Meng Yan, familiar to you, I know, and probably many of your viewers too, as well as to me, Michael contacted Dr. Li Meng Yan and asked her, what do you think this could possibly mean? What does this indicate? What would you think? And she said that back in 2013, CCP, Chinese Communist Party leader Xi Jinping, established a unit, the 75th Special Operations Brigade of the People's Liberation Army, established again 2013. This is a unit that is subordinate to the Joint Staff Department of the PLA's Central Military Command, and this unit is home-based in China's Yunnan province. Now, they train as special forces, you would know this, Tommy, in all kinds of terrain, including mountainous, including naval training, and of course jungle. Well, in this case, it was the jungle training that apparently gave them their moniker, which they go by Jungle Tigers. And we got this from Dr. Li Meng Yan. And she said that for the Jungle Tigers, their signature training ritual is the drinking of chicken's blood. So that's what we're looking at in that particular case.
I was going to make a comment about Michael Yan when you first brought him up, because people ask me and email me and comment all the time, Tommy, you got to get him on. And I've been trying to get him on for 3 years, and I can't get in touch with him. But I decided to zip it. But then you mentioned again that you were talking to him on the phone. So now, like a very
We'll
rude,
have to try again. Yeah.
I need you to put me in touch with him. I'm going to
At least if he has some open space in his calendar, his schedule.
I'm going to rudely put you on the spot and ask you to put me in touch with him.
Okay.
So Chinese special forces at the southern border.
Well, that is what it looks like, and we don't mean just at our southern border. These are probably not the sort of migrants who are going through ports of entry and turning themselves in to CBP, Customs and Border Protection. These are far more likely, seems to me, to be the sort of illegal aliens who are going around the ports of entry, slipping in through other places between the ports of entry, and have likely in who knows how many numbers already entered the United States and are who knows where doing who knows what.
Well, they're probably doing what special forces do, which includes infrastructure sabotage.
Well, or linking up maybe first
Sure.
with others from their unit, maybe in different places around the country with, groups positioned in different strategic locations, not just one place, doing, pre-attack planning, surveillance, that sort of thing. This is where my mind goes.
One of my buddies is a former Green Beret, and when all the trains were derailing, he was like, theoretically, if I was an agent from another country, not that I would ever do this, he was like, I would theoretically go to Lowe's and get this, that, and the other thing, all for about $300, and then theoretically go to my nearest, railroad track I found. And he was saying, he's like, you could do this for $300 with one night of staking out the area. In 36 hours, you could have a train derailed.
Well, I'll tell you what really shocked me is when some of these more recent train derailments were making the news headlines. I was reading commentary from other experts, railway experts, who were saying, we the American people don't have the foggiest clue how commonplace railroad derailments are. I didn't know, but there are literally hundreds of them every single year.
Yeah.
And that's not sabotage. That's careless.
Sure.
That is mistakes. That's errors. That's I don't know what. Transportation Secretary, anybody home?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I read that as well. I think it's something more like, it's like 1,000 a day or something. Something insane.
No, I don't think that many, but maybe per.
But so the point is what I also read in there was purposeful derailments, where they're trying to like purposely do something. They just barely hop the track. I don't know why they put these weird block things on there. Those are included. So the intentional control derailments that are barely hopping off the tracks.
Like what, insurance or something?
No. It's like something they actually do. And when it's like a train, like if like two trains are going and one needs to break off. But basically the intentional little tiny hops are categorized as the same as cataclysmic. So I don't know how much
casualty causing derailments. Yeah.
The one in the East Palestine one would technically
East
be
Palestine, Ohio.
That would count as, that would also just be one, and so would a slight hop off the track.
Okay, big difference between them. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
I also know nothing about this, so I don't know how accurate what I'm saying is. So just full disclosure, and I'm often wrong, more often than almost all the time. So, but I want to get back. So what realistically, how long has this been going on? I mean, I think it would be silly to assume, at least for me, that this is anything new, that our adversaries are slipping past our unchecked borders.
Well, I mean, we know from CBP's own published statistics about the dozens upon dozens, nearly 100 in the last fiscal year, that being fiscal year 2022, of individuals on the various terror watch lists that our national security agencies keep. So there's that. And those are the ones that have been apprehended, caught. Never mind the gotaways, which we really don't know. So, yeah, I mean, we also know from CBP and other reporting that one of the cartel tactics is to flood a legal port of entry place with many hundreds all at once of intending migrants, most of them illegals, so that the resources of CBP are pulled away from other places along the border to process these people. They all get processed, they all get paperwork, and they say, please turn yourself into ICE in the next, your appointment is in 4 years. Adios, amigos. And off they go. Well, while they're dealing with that, changing diapers and handing out baby formula, the places in between the ports of entry are left unguarded, maybe monitored technologically, and that's where people can discern how there may be some gotaways there, but no people, no CBP agents actually there, and that's where they come in then. Well, they flood the zone of the port of entry. That leaves the other places open, and then the jihadis come through, the narco traffickers come through, the child traffickers, we should talk about that, come through, and others maybe perhaps like some of these Chinese men. That's when and where they would try to come in.
Let's jump onto it then, the child traffickers.
Yeah. So during the Trump administration, a policy for CBP was enforced under which the family groups that claimed they were traveling with a related child were tested on the spot, cheek swab DNA testing on the spot at the port of entry. And when it was determined that, yes, these are related, parents probably, and child, or at least closely related, okay, vaya con Dios. But when they were not, they were caught on the spot. And that is when, yes, children were separated from those adults because those adults were traffickers, and they were denied entry, the adults, and the children were saved from what would have been certain abuse, probably involuntary servitude in, I don't know, meat packaging plants, and so forth across the United States, to pay off their passage fee, right, to the cartels, or worse yet, that they would be trafficked into child sex trafficking rings. And that policy, which caught a number of people this way, traffickers this way, also serve the purpose of deterring others. So those attempts at slipping through by claiming you've got a kid along with you, that's my child, those attempts diminished drastically. And that was the point of it. And that was a very successful policy. But it wasn't law. It was a policy. And so when the Biden administration came in, just a couple of weeks ago, or not even quite yet, end of May this year, 2023, the Biden administration ended the policy of DNA testing at the border. Nobody can even fathom why they would do that, why DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas would do that, except that they are knowingly, deliberately aiding and abetting child trafficking. Now, in response to that, I just saw this today, and that is that during a a House of Representatives hearing in Congress yesterday on June the 14th, House Homeland Security Chair Mark Green, who is a Republican from the state of Tennessee, was discussing these issues and talking about that. And so there is a not only an investigation into this policy, or the curtailing, the ending of the policy, but also into Homeland Security, Department of Homeland Security itself, and Secretary Mayorkas. And then there was also I'm looking at my notes, because I just saw this today.
You're good.
There's a new bill that's been proposed in Congress that would codify into law, if the bill were to be passed, the requirement for DNA testing of family units with minor children at the border. Don't know yet what chances that bill has of passing. Probably pretty good in the House. Who knows what they'll do in the Senate? And with child trafficker in chief sitting in the Oval Office, would he veto a bill like that? Have to wait and see. But that is all in the works right now. But more and more we're seeing, this issue of the child trafficking brought out. I saw Jason Chaffetz, former representative Jason Chaffetz, on another program on TV earlier today too, and he was just absolutely laying into the administration and to Secretary Mayorkas for permitting, allowing, aiding, and abetting child trafficking, talking out loud about what happens to these poor little kids who have been literally found in the middle of the night in things like meatpacking plants, I mentioned earlier, but also known to be trafficked into sex trafficking all across the United States. And this is because of our open border, President Biden's, Secretary Mayorkas's open border policy. By the way, it's not just the southern border, but the northern border is experiencing problems too in terms of illegal migration. But their policies of just turning a blind eye to, not just the narco trafficking, not just the flood of fentanyl coming into the country, that, by the way, is now the leading cause of death for young Americans between the ages of 18 and 45. Turning a blind eye to that, turning a blind eye to the jihadis and the terrorists coming in, but also turning a blind eye. I mean, I don't know how you rank these things, but to me, the abuse of children is just the worst, and that they don't care. They just don't care.
Just unforgivable. I mean, really, that's unforgivable. Can you expand on the northern border?
Well, I don't have as much information or data about that as has become, really widespread for the southern border. I should mention here, by the way, our website, defendtheborder.org. I've mentioned it before, defendtheborder.org, where I write, and others also write there. This is a collaboration among Tom Trento, the United West organization, Tom Homan, President Trump's former acting ICE director, and a number of us who contribute articles and commentary to that website, defendtheborder.org. But I would recommend that as a good place to go for articles that include information from the reporters I've mentioned, like Todd Bensman, like Michael Yon, like the Daily Caller, Just the News, articles from these different outlets. And probably there will be the best chance to find out more about what's going on the northern border as well as the southern border. But I gather that with Canadian policies under Justin Trudeau, their prime minister, things are picking up along the northern border into the United States too.
Just making sure I added it into the description. I think it's in there already, but I just want to, if I double edit, then no problem with that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I got you. The kind of shift just because it's on my mind, because I had on Tony Lyons talking about RFK. What do you think? Is it the Democrats don't want to do primaries? Is that what's going on right now?
Well, if you're president and your main candidate to run for a second term and stand for election again next year, what is it, 17 or something months away from now, in November of 2024, is Joe Biden, who is visibly declining physically and cognitively just about every day.
Yeah.
Would you want to risk putting him up on a stage
Of course
for
not.
an open debate
Of course not.
with somebody like a Robert Kennedy Jr. or Marianne Williamson, who's another candidate as well?
Of course you wouldn't, especially because RFK is buttoned up and it's got all his talking points. But do you think they will? I mean, is there any reason why they'd have? No, they don't have to.
I don't think they will. I think they know that is a disaster in the making. Teleprompter or earpieces notwithstanding, notes, whatever. Probably. I mean, we're talking about the primaries kicking off really in early, next year. Let's say, the January, February, March timeframe really getting going. Who knows where President Joe Biden will be cognitively and physically at that point in time. They are not going to risk it. They'll put him in the basement again. Worked last time, try it again. Maybe a bunch of new tricks for stealing elections again this time.
Yeah. What do you think would be the catalyst for any sort of reformation of the border?
Did you say the catalyst?
What would be the catalyst for a reformation of what is happening at the border?
A new president named Donald J. Trump.
That's it.
I really don't see anything else changing these policies before then, because, we all look at what's going on down there as a practically unmitigated catastrophe, not just for the country and what it's doing to our society and communities all over the United States, but for these illegal aliens themselves, the migrants themselves, who are suffering terribly in terms of assault and rape and robbery and all kinds of diseases, by the way, that they're bringing into the United States, hacking and coughing and sneezing their way into our country, carrying things like polio, scabies, who knows what else, antibiotic-resistant tuberculosis that we haven't seen here in America in decades. But they're the ones suffering from those diseases, and of course we will too before too long. So we see all that as an unmitigated catastrophe, a disaster. But apparently our leadership at the moment does not see it that way. They love it. They think this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, because they think that these, newcomers are going to wind up at some point not only being given some kind of amnesty, but maybe even citizenship and the right to vote. And they think that most of them, if not all of them, will vote Democrat. Not sure that's necessarily true. If you look at second and third generation, let's say, Hispanic communities in the United States, many of whom, by the way, waited in line and came here legally, they're pretty conservative people in terms of their values. Hard work, family-oriented, Christian, practicing devout Christians. So not sure that formula they have in mind is going to work out, but nevertheless, that's how they're thinking. And we think it's awful. We think it's a disaster. We know it's a disaster for the people themselves, for us, the American people, but they don't see it that way.
And for clarification, all those illnesses, that's all stuff that they used to check for at, like, Ellis Island, right?
Well, right.
So
As a matter of fact,
new,
that's what Title 42 under the Trump administration was for. In that case, specifically aimed at the then China virus, the coronavirus pandemic, but in my mind, ought to be applicable for any of these other serious diseases that these illegals are carrying in with them. but
Yeah,
they don't.
I've seen
They're not doing
comments
that.
about
That
that.
that expired May 11 of this year.
Yeah, I've seen comments about that. They're like, this is just some new form of xenophobia. It's like, dude, you can go back to pre-World War One and look at videos of them coming through. I mean, like old. I mean, they're terrible quality, but black and white, no audio videos. But yeah, you go up, right? They'll give you a check. They'll circle something. If you got a dot, they got the doctor right there. You go that way. You go. It's like 1905. This isn't new.
Exactly.
This isn't new
That's
at all,
right.
because that is the practices of public health.
Well, and many of our own ancestors, I think mine included,
My Irish ancestors, yeah.
came in legally that way, and came through Ellis Island and, legally entered America.
I mean,
But no, that's not so much what they're doing today. No.
yeah, but I know for a fact that it is supposed to still happen today, because I've interviewed multiple times Dr. Alex Diaz, who was the head of this stuff, I think in Texas, if not the whole southern border. But yeah, it was, it's limited. It's like 5 minutes per person, but they have a team of doctors and they come and do 1,000 people a day. But no, you're looking for these you're just looking for the absolute worst possible. Yeah, you got a cough, whatever. They're looking for tuberculosis, polio. They're looking for the bad, excuse my French, the bad shit. And they get them all out, knock them off, 5 minutes, you're out. Like, we still do it. It is supposed to still happen. So it's not pearl clutching or xenophobic to say, like, yeah, man, what are they bringing in? If I can't go to the gym because I don't have a gene therapy vaccine card, then in what rational universe can I also walk across the southern border? Well, the answer is I'm not walking across the southern border voting Democrat. That's what it is. That's not some ridiculous statement. That is what it is. But you can't bring it up without being called a racist.
Yeah, but thank you, because you do.
Yeah. And then to also in the last 10 minutes or so, can we touch on the fentanyl? Because that is, way back. I think episode like 200 or something. I had on, I can't even remember his name, but the author of the book Fentanyl Inc. I think it was Ben Westhoff, and that was in 2020. And he was talking about the fentanyl epidemic.
Yeah.
We're 3 years later now. Could you maybe touch on that?
Yeah, so fentanyl, first of all, is a synthetic opioid. It is mixed up from precursor chemicals in a lab, and those labs can be as small as backyard setups. As far as we're talking about, even back to the Trump administration, it was known that fentanyl was coming in through our southern border, along with other illicit contraband drugs, the heroin, the methamphetamines, also, the marijuana and so forth, cocaine. And at the time, it was finished tablets coming across that border that had been shipped first to Mexico to the cartels down there, in particular Sinaloa, which commands a good stretch of our southern border from Arizona to Texas. And so when President Trump spoke at one point to Xi Jinping, he said, knock it off, stop that. And Xi Jinping, okay, sure, with his Winnie the Pooh smile. And so, for what good that was, what happened is that the Chinese then stopped shipping the finished tablets of fentanyl over to Mexico for onward trafficking north to the United States, and instead began sending the precursor chemicals. As I said, it's synthetic, completely, made from precursor chemicals. And what happens in China is that nothing like this, of this scale, happens without at least the tacit knowledge and approval of the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. And so what's happening now is that criminal gangs, which are allowed to function by the CCP, send the precursor chemicals to Mexico, along with the industrial presses that stamp out from the powder the tablets, the pills, that are the final form, the cartels then bag up and ship north. The other thing to note here is that in return, of course, huge amounts of money, profits, and that money is sent back to Chinese banks, which are under the control of the Chinese Communist Party, and those banks launder that money for the cartels. There's a constant interchange between them. And this too, of course, is sanctioned, that is allowed by the CCP. Except that Donald Trump is not president anymore, and he's not there to lay down the law to the Chinese Communist Party anymore.
Yeah, you're not making money in the CCP without some approval, whether it's conscious or unconscious, whether it's they stamp
this is a racket. I mean, this is racketeering.
Oh yeah.
Among the Chinese Communist Party, the criminal gangs, the national banks in China, and the cartels in Mexico.
Yeah. It's like was it HSBC and Hezbollah back in like 2011 or something? Yeah, no, man. Like, if there's money to be laundered, these banks will do it. And I mean, again, by leaving an open border, you are also giving your tacit approval of it. You're looking the other way. There's no, they're not unaware of it at the DHS. Yeah. They know it's happening. You can't say if you and I know it's happening on this podcast, they know it's happening. And so you are given, so be it crime from illegal immigrants, be it I
mean, I said before that opioid deaths, including the majority, over 70% of that being fentanyl, is the leading cause of death for Americans between the ages of 18 and 45.
Yeah.
And to put some numbers to that, it's over 100,000 Americans murdered by the CCP and the cartels in the last fiscal year, 2022, which folks may know, fiscal year runs 1st of October to the 30th of September. And so the new fiscal year that we're in right now, fiscal year 2023, began 1st of October. We're now in early June of 2023. In these 9 months, we're already on track, sadly, tragically, to surpass the death count from the last fiscal year due to fentanyl, yes, and other opioids too, but primarily fentanyl.
Well, it's not an exaggerating statement to say that it's not just murdered by the CCP, but by our own government. Because again,
complicit.
If you are turning a blind eye to what is happening, you're not just letting in individuals with this. I mean, on the lowest end, it's like, you're overriding, you're overloading social net systems. Sure, that's one argument. You could say crime's going up. That's another argument. But I mean, the biggest is, child sex trafficking. And fentanyl. And none of this it's not an exaggeration to say that you have a hand in it. You're letting it happen. You are the government. You are the law of the land. You're letting this happen. There's no murky water there. There's no plausible deniability. This isn't some foreign shadowy black ops program that they actually didn't tell the president about. This is right here, every day, all day, on the southern border.
Yeah.
That's it.
And if Republicans had not, taken control of the House of Representatives in the last election last year, 2022, we might not even yet know as much as we do about this. Thanks in any case to intrepid reporters like Todd Bensman and Michael Yon, but those hearings are important, I think, and we'll say, well, where's the accountability? Where does it go from there? Well, at the moment, no, the Democrats do control the Senate, and of course the White House also controlled by the Democrats. So we may not have that accountability right yet, but the House does have a lot of powers, which I'm happy to say and to see that they're exercising, meaning holding the hearings, putting some of our, these top officials of departments like Alejandro Mayorkas under oath, on the witness stand, even though they smirk and refuse to answer questions. But it does make for the record an example, an expose of what's going on, and again that the American people are finally able to see, and would never have happened, were the Democrats to have held control of the House.
As I always do with our episodes, is there any silver lining? Is there any good news? Is there anything cheery?
Well, it's not cheery, but what I will say is that I think the dam of information is bursting open. If that's a positive, at least because of the reporters we've talked about, because of the hearings being held on Capitol Hill, because of certain, House Freedom Caucus members in particular in the House of Representatives, at least the information is finally coming out. Tip of the hat also goes to John Solomon at Just the News, and other places too. But it's a slight, but I think maybe something of a silver lining, perhaps, that we can end on.
Yeah, I mean, you can't censor every topic. It's it's southern border, it's vaccine injuries, it's this, that, the other thing. I mean, maybe that is the positive news, that they're trying to juggle so many things at once that it's all going to come crashing down. And that might not sound like positive news, but it's the most positive news we can get out of this.
I think so at the moment. Yeah.
Oof. Well, always cheery episodes with Miss Clare Lopez.
Don't you love it?
I do. No, I wouldn't keep having you back on if I didn't.
It's important, and I thank you for allowing us to talk about such grim topics, because I do think they're important.
Well, they are.
And going forward, hopefully, we'll move to a better place.
I think we will. With that, guys, please go in the description. Please go follow Miss Lopez, especially on Twitter, and all the links I updated while we were talking. Please go click on those, and Miss Lopez, till next time.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless everybody.
Recording stopped.
Stay safe out there. Peace.